500 hours. Unnamed reef, Spratly Archipelago. The South China Sea is a black void, merging with the dark sky at an invisible horizon. Thick, suffocating humidity presses down on the coral sandbar. The air smells of sulfur, wet salt, and unburnt diesel fuel. A relentless surf pounds against the sharp reef edge, masking the mechanical growl of heavy engines. On the beach, the Iranian Expeditionary Force works with frantic urgency. 24 armored vehicles grind across the crushed coral, their tracks chewing deep ruts into the white sand. Red tactical lights cut through the gloom. A heavy armored vehicle lurches forward, its engine roaring as the driver fights for traction on the loose surface. The steel tracks spin violently, throwing a rooster tail of wet sand and sharp rocks into the air. The vehicle slides sideways. Its rear armor slams into a grove of palm trees. The collision snaps the trunks like dry matchsticks. Wood splinters explode outward. The massive machine shudders and comes to a halt, listing dangerously in a soft depression. A sergeant sprints toward the stalled vehicle. He signals aggressively with a glowing baton. The hatch flies open. The driver scrambles out, coughing in the exhaust fumes. He jumps down to the sand, boots sinking ankle deep. The sergeant points to the left track. A link hangs loose, disconnected by the force of the slide. The crew leaps into action. Two soldiers drag a heavy steel tow cable from the recovery hooks of a second armored vehicle. The braided steel snake hisses as it drags across the coral. They wrestle the heavy loop onto the stuck vehicle's front tow pintle. The locking pin slams home with a metallic clang. The recovery vehicle revs its engine. Black smoke erupts from its exhaust stack. The cable pulls taut, vibrating with immense tension. It groans under the strain. The stuck vehicle jerks forward, tearing free from the sand trap. It smashes back onto level ground, rocking on its suspension. All along the defensive line, the preparation is brutal and physical. Infantrymen swing entrenching tools, hacking at the coral bedrock to create hull-down positions. Sparks fly where steel strikes stone. They heave heavy sandbags onto the front slopes of the vehicles, building blast walls. A loader on the flank vehicle hauls a crate of 30mm ammunition up the side of the hull. He slips on the oil-slicked armor. The crate crashes down onto the deck, cracking open. He ignores the bruise on his shin and rips the lid off. He feeds the golden belt of shells into the feeder chute of the autocannon. The mechanism swallows the rounds with a rhythmic clatter. The company commander stands on the roof of the command vehicle. He scans the perimeter through night vision goggles. The world appears in grainy green phosphor. He keys his radio handset. The static hisses. He orders the 3rd platoon to tighten the interval. The gap between the vehicles is too wide. On the far right flank, 3 armored vehicles reverse, their backup alarms disabled. The drivers rely on hand signals. They pivot their hulls, angling their frontal armor toward the open ocean. Turrets rotate with a high-pitched electric whine. The long barrels of the autocannons depress, locking onto the likely approach vectors from the sea. The distinct clack-clack of heavy machine guns being cocked echoes down the line. The work reaches a fever pitch. Engines idle down to a low rumble. Camouflage nets are thrown over the turrets, breaking up the sharp silhouettes against the tree line. The soldiers secure the nets with stakes driven into the ground. They are dug in. The 24 vehicles form a jagged wall of steel facing the water, a dormant beast waiting to wake up. The commander checks his watch. He drops his hand. The order passes down the line. One by one, the engines cut out. The roar of the diesels dies away, replaced instantly by the rushing sound of the wind and the waves. The silence is sudden and heavy. Soldiers wipe sweat and grease from their faces, their chests heaving from the exertion. They lean against the cold armor of their vehicles, weapons gripped tight. They watch the horizon. The water is empty. 05:15 hours. Dense jungle clearing, southern China mainland. Mist swirls around the base of steep limestone karsts. The canopy overhead is thick, blocking the fading stars. 6 massive 8-wheeled transporter trucks sit in a semicircle. Their tires are buried deep in the mud to anchor the chassis. The vehicles are coated in wet leaves and digital camouflage netting. The forest is quiet, save for the hum of diesel generators. A pneumatic hiss cuts through the humidity. Hydraulic pistons whine. The massive launch canisters on the backs of the trucks begin to rise. They pivot slowly, grinding upward until they stand vertical, aiming straight at the zenith. The stabilizers extend, driving steel feet into the soft earth to brace against the recoil. The launch sequence initiates. A solid click echoes from the lead truck. Ignition. A blinding flash turns the jungle clearing into day. A column of orange fire erupts from the base of the first tube. The exhaust blast hits the ground and fans out, incinerating the grass and scrubbing the bushes flat. The ground shakes violently, rattling the teeth of the crew inside the armored cabs. The first tactical ballistic missile tears free from its canister. It screams upward, riding a pillar of pure thrust. The noise is deafening. It is not a sound, it is a physical blow. The second truck fires, then the third. The air pressure drops instantly as the massive engines consume the oxygen. Leaves are stripped from the trees by the shock waves. The missiles accelerate, breaking the sound barrier within seconds. Sonic booms crack like thunder, overlapping into a continuous roar. The projectiles punch through the low cloud layer, leaving thick, twisting trails of white smoke that scar the sky. Inside the mobile command post, the fire control officer grips the console. The screens flicker with rapid data streams. He watches the green tracking lines arc high into the stratosphere. He confirms the trajectory separation. The guidance fins on the missiles twitch, adjusting the flight path by millimeters. The warheads peak at the apex of their flight and nose over. Gravity takes hold. They begin the terminal dive toward the coordinates of the reef. The roar fades to a distant, angry rumble high above. The clearing is left choking in thick, acrid smoke. Burning debris rains down on the transporter trucks. The launch tubes are empty, scorching hot and smoking. The silence rushes back in, but the weapon is already gone. The payload is outbound at hypersonic speed. 0518 hours, command post, Spratly Reef. The digital silence inside the command vehicle shatters. The air defense radar screen pulses. It washes the cramped interior in a strobing red light. A single contact appears at the very top of the scope. Then two, then six. They drop vertically through the atmosphere, closing the distance at impossible speed. The digital readout flashes Mach 5. The operator slams his fist onto the general alarm button. The air raid siren screams. The sound is a rising mechanical wail that cuts through the heavy humidity. It drowns out the rhythm of the surf. On the beach, heads snap up. Soldiers drop their water canteens. They shield their eyes against the glare of the morning sky. High above the reef, the cloud layer tears open. 6 burning white streaks puncture the gray ceiling. They look like meteors, glowing orange with friction heat. The sound arrives a split second later. It is a terrifying, high-pitched shriek. It sounds like the sky is being ripped in half by a giant hand. The noise vibrates in the chests of the men on the ground. It is the sound of terminal velocity. "Incoming! Take cover!" an officer roars over the company radio net. The reaction is instant. Crews dive off the hulls of their armored vehicles. Bodies hit the sand hard. Soldiers scramble into the shallow foxholes dug between the tracks. A driver throws himself under the heavy chassis of his vehicle, curling into a ball in the dirt. He presses his hands over his ears. The shrieking grows louder, shifting pitch to a deafening roar as the warheads plunge into the lower atmosphere. The air pressure on the island fluctuates violently. The incoming projectiles push a massive wall of compressed air ahead of them. The palm trees bend violently toward the ground. The lead missile corrects its course. The aerodynamic fins bite into the thick air. It aims directly for the center of the vehicle park. 0519 hours, center of the vehicle park, Spratly Reef. The world slows down for a fraction of a second. The lead missile is the blur of gray steel and heat. It slams into the soft earth directly between the logistics truck and the command tent. The impact is absolute. The ground does not just break, it liquefies. The 500-kilogram high-explosive warhead detonates instantly upon contact with the coral bedrock. A sphere of blinding white light expands outward, hotter than the surface of the sun. The logistics truck vanishes. It is simply erased. The chassis vaporizes into a cloud of molten steel and burning rubber. The engine block transforms into shrapnel, flying outward at supersonic speed. The shockwave hits the perimeter like a physical hammer. It shears the palm trees off at the roots. The trunks fly horizontally through the air, tumbling end over end. The blast wave catches the main communications antenna. The steel mast buckles, snaps in half, and crashes down onto the roof of the command vehicle. Sparks shower the deck. The radio link dies instantly. Soldiers near the epicenter are lifted off their feet. The overpressure hurls them through the air like rag dolls. They slam into the sides of the armored vehicles or crash into the sand dunes. Helmets fly off. Dust and pulverized coral erupt into a massive mushroom cloud that blots out the rising sun. The nearest armored vehicle takes the brunt of the blast. The 30-ton machine is shoved sideways by the sheer force of the explosion. Its tracks screech across the bedrock, grinding violently. The suspension collapses on the left side. The road wheels blow out. The heavy vehicle lists sharply, slamming into the dirt. Inside, the crew is thrown against the steel walls. The lieutenant in the command hatch is thrown forward. His face smashes into the periscope sight, Blood sprays across the instrument panel. He grabs the radio handset. He screams for a situation report. The only reply is the hiss of dead static. The command net is gone. 0520 hours, Vehicle Park, Spratly Reef. The dust from the first explosion hangs in the air like a thick gray curtain. Soldiers stumble through the haze, coughing, dragging wounded comrades. Their ears ring with a high-pitched whine that drowns out the world. Through the smoke, a second sound tears the sky apart. It is a different pitch, sharper, higher. The second missile does not strike the earth. It detonates 500 feet above the beach. A small explosive charge shatters the nose cone. The outer skin of the missile peels away in huge, twisting sheets of metal. The canister vomits its payload. Hundreds of black, fist-sized submunitions spill out into the air. They scatter in a wide, deadly arc, creating a perfect circle of death above the vehicle formation. Gravity takes over, the bomblets stabilize. They rain down on the exposed column. The impact is not a single boom, but a rolling thunder of hundreds of detonations. Crump, 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 crump. The sound is rapid fire, like a giant ripping a sheet of canvas. The submunitions strike the tops of the armored vehicles. This is the kill zone. The roof armor is thin, designed only for shrapnel, not direct hits. The shaped charges inside the bomblets detonate upon contact. They fire focused jets of molten copper downward at hypersonic speeds. The liquid metal punches through the steel roofs as if they were made of paper. There is no resistance. The jets slice through hatches, engine decks, and turret roofs. Inside the vehicles, the effect is catastrophic. The copper jets exit the ceiling and spray the interior with spall, razor-sharp fragments of the vehicle's own armor. The hot metal ricochets off the walls, shredding wiring looms, hydraulic lines, and flesh. Outside, the fragmentation sleeves on the bomblets explode outward. Thousands of tungsten cubes scour the beach. They shred the camouflage netting. They punch through the canvas sides of the supply trucks. A fuel tanker parked near the edge of the clearing is riddled with holes. Diesel fuel sprays out in high-pressure streams, soaking the hot sand. Soldiers caught in this open dive for cover, but the shrapnel sweeps over them like a scythe. The air is filled with flying dirt, steel, and blood. 0522 hours, the burning defensive line, Spratly Reef. The air temperature spikes. The ground is slick with the mixture of spilled diesel fuel and hydraulic fluid leaking from the perforated hulls. A piece of burning debris from the command tent flutters down. It lands in a pool of fuel next to the third armored vehicle. The ignition is instantaneous. A wall of orange flame whooshes upward, consuming the oxygen. The fire races across the sand like a living thing, following the trails of leaked fuel. It washes over the tracks of the damaged vehicles. The fire climbs the steel sides, pouring into the open hatches and the jagged holes punched by the cluster munitions. Inside the third vehicle, the heat becomes critical. The fire reaches the ammunition storage rack. The propellant charges in the 30mm shells begin to burn. The pressure inside the sealed hull rises exponentially in a millisecond. The steel groans. The catastrophic failure point is reached. The vehicle detonates. The explosion is internal and violent. The blast wave has nowhere to go but up. It rips the 10-ton turret ring straight off the chassis. The turret is hurled 50 feet into the air, spinning end over end, trailing a tail of fire. It crashes down onto the beach with a ground-shaking thud, crushing a palm tree. The hull acts like a chimney. A pillar of white-hot flame jets out of the empty turret ring, reaching 3 stories high. This is the cook-off. The heat radiates outward with blistering intensity. The metal skin of the vehicle glows cherry red, then white. The paint blisters and peels away. The shockwave from the first cook-off slams into the vehicle parked next to it. The concussion ruptures the external fuel drums on the neighbor's rear deck. Burning liquid sprays across the engine grate. The intake fans suck the fire deep into the engine block. The turbine screams as it over-revs and melts. A second explosion rips through the line. Another turret flies into the air. The chain reaction is unstoppable. One by one, the stored ammunition inside the tightly packed column begins to sympathize. Rockets cook off in their tubes, launching erratically into the sand or corkscrewing into the ocean. The beach becomes an inferno of exploding ordnance and burning steel. 0530 hours. The kill zone, Spratly Reef. Thick, oily smoke blankets the beach, turning the morning sun into a dull red disk. Visibility drops to 10 meters. The heat is suffocating. The air tastes of copper and burnt hair. The ground is a landscape of craters and twisted metal. A side hatch on a burning armored vehicle kicks open. A driver tumbles out. He hits the sand hard, rolling frantically. Flames cling to his left sleeve and trouser leg. He screams. A medic sprints from a shallow crater. He tackles the burning man. He scoops up handfuls of wet sand and smothers the fire. The flames die out, leaving smoking, blackened fabric fused to the skin. The driver writhes in the dirt, clutching his leg. Nearby, a corporal stumbles through the haze. Blood flows freely from both ears, dripping onto his collar. His eardrums are ruptured. He walks in a jagged line, disoriented by the concussion. He trips over a piece of wreckage and falls heavily. He tries to push himself up, but his right arm collapses. A jagged shard of shrapnel protrudes from his bicep. He stares at it, eyes wide, mouth open in a silent scream. "Rally Point Alpha, move!" The company commander emerges from the smoke. His uniform is torn. His face is masked in soot. He waves a pistol in the air. He grabs a dazed rifleman by the shoulder plate of his body armor and shoves him toward the tree line. Two soldiers drag a wounded gunner across the open ground. They grip his vest handles, hauling him backward. The gunner's boots drag through the sand, leaving a wide, bloody trail. A 30mm shell inside a nearby wreck cooks off. Bang! The explosion sends a spray of sparks over them. The rescuers flinch but do not stop. They heave the wounded man over the lip of a sand berm and drop him into cover. A young private sits with his back against a palm stump. He fumbles with a tourniquet. His hands shake uncontrollably. He tries to twist the windlass rod, but his fingers are slick with blood. The commander kneels beside him. He slaps the private's hand away. He twists the rod tight. The bleeding stops. The commander pulls the boy to his feet and shoves an assault rifle into his chest. He points to the perimeter. The boy nods, wipes his eyes, and runs. The chaos is absolute. Men shout names into the gloom. Whistles blow. The survivors crawl out of the inferno, reforming their shattered lines in the jungle fringe. Behind them, the vehicle park is a graveyard of burning steel. 05:45 hours, low altitude over the South China Sea. The water is choppy, gray waves capped with white foam. Three dark silhouettes skim just 10 feet above the swells. The rotor wash flattens the water surface, creating a trailing mist. The rhythmic thud-thud-thud of heavy blades beats against the humid air. The lead attack helicopter banks sharp left. The pilot pulls the collective. The nose pitches up. The machine rises like a predatory wasp, clearing the smoke layer drifting from the burning island. On the beach, a sergeant screams a warning. He points to the sea. It is too late. The helicopters pop up over the reef edge. The sensor turrets under their noses swivel, the glass lenses glinting like insect eyes. They lock onto the heat signatures of the survivors huddled near the tree line. The lead helicopter fires. The 23mm chain gun under the nose erupts. A 3-foot tongue of flame strobes from the barrel. The sound is a dry, tearing buzz. Brrrt! The sand in front of the Iranian position explodes. A linear wall of dust and coral shards races up the beach at supersonic speed. It walks right through the defensive line. Three soldiers running for the cover of a fallen log are caught in the open. The heavy rounds strike them with terrible kinetic energy. The impacts tear through body armor and flesh. The men are thrown violently into the dirt, their bodies broken. The sand around them is churned into a red paste. The wingman helicopter peels off to the right. It dips its nose. Two pods on the stub wings ignite. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. A salvo of unguided rockets streaks toward the jungle fringe. They strike the rally point. Explosions ripple through the palms. Trees shatter. Shrapnel shreds the thick undergrowth. An Iranian machine gun team tries to set up their weapon on a tripod. A rocket detonates 5 feet away. The blast flips the heavy gun backward. The gunner collapses, clutching his chest. The third helicopter holds a hover over the burning vehicle park. It acts as a sniper. The gunner watches his thermal screen. A survivor tries to crawl out from under a wrecked truck. The chain gun barks once, a short burst. The truck's suspension collapses further as the rounds punch through the wheel well. The movement stops. The air is filled with the smell of ozone and pulverized rock. The surviving infantry are pinned flat against the earth. They cannot lift their heads. The suppressing fire is total. The helicopters circle like vultures, their rotors chopping the smoke, waiting for any sign of movement. 0600 hours, littoral waters, off the coast of the Spratly Reef. The gray sea mist clings to the water's surface, mixing with the black smoke drifting from the island. The waves are gentle, lapping against the charred debris floating in the surf. A deep, rhythmic thrumming sound begins to vibrate the water. It grows louder, resonating in the chests of the Iranian survivors hiding in the dunes. The mist swirls and breaks apart. A massive steel bow slices through the fog. A destroyer emerges, towering over the shallow reef. Its gray hull is a wall of steel, blotting out the horizon. The 130mm main gun on the foredeck rotates with a mechanical whine. The barrel elevates, aiming over the heads of the burning vehicle park. Boom! The muzzle flash is a blinding yellow sphere. The ship shudders. The shockwave ripples across the water, flattening the waves. A heavy, high-explosive shell screams over the beach. It impacts the jungle canopy 300 meters inland. The explosion fractures the tree line, sending timber and earth flying skyward. It is a warning shot. Behind the destroyer, the bow doors of a massive landing ship groan open. Steel ramps slam down into the swells. The interior bay is lit with red combat lights. Amphibious fighting vehicles surge out of the hold. They plunge into the ocean, burying their noses in the foam before popping back up. Their water jets churn the sea into a white froth. They form a line abreast, looking like swimming predatory beetles. They accelerate toward the beach, engines roaring. The lead amphibious vehicle hits the shallows. The tracks catch the coral reef. The engine note deepens as it shifts from water jets to track drive. The heavy machine lurches up onto the dry sand, water cascading off its armor. The rear ramp drops. Chinese Marines pour out. They move with fluid, practiced aggression. They wear blue-gray digital camouflage that blurs against the smoke and sea. Their boots splash into the wet sand. They fan out instantly, assault rifles raised. "Contact front!" a squad leader shouts. A lone Iranian machine gun opens up from a pile of driftwood. Bullets spark off the front armor of the amphibious vehicle. The vehicle's turret snaps toward the threat. The 30mm cannon fires 3 rapid rounds. Thud, thud, thud. The driftwood pile disintegrates. The firing stops. The Marines advance. They move in bounding overwatch. One team fires, one team moves. They step over the burning debris of the Iranian armor. They secure the beachhead, pushing the perimeter inland with overwhelming momentum. The naval encirclement is complete. 0630 hours. The wreckage field, Spratly Reef. The sun is fully up, but the battlefield remains in twilight, choked by heavy black smoke from the oil fires. The heat is intense, radiating from the glowing hulks of the destroyed armored column. The air is thick with the crack and snap of supersonic bullets. Deep in the center of the kill zone, the remnants of the Iranian platoon make their final stand. They crouch behind the twisted chassis of a gutted armored vehicle. The metal is still hot to the touch. It offers the only solid cover on the flat beach. A sergeant leans around the jagged edge of a torn track guard. He fires his assault rifle. The weapon bucks against his shoulder. Brass casings spin into the sand. He ducks back just as a burst of return fire hammers the steel plate next to his head. Sparks shower his face. He wipes the soot from his eyes and screams for ammo. A young soldier crawls through the dirt, dragging a green metal crate. He pushes it forward. The sergeant prizes the lid open with a combat knife. He grabs a handful of magazines. His hands are slick with sweat and grease. "Rocket up!" the sergeant roars. A heavy weapons specialist steps up to the gap. He shoulders a rocket launcher. He ignores the whizzing bullets. He sights down the iron tube. Through the smoke, the silhouette of a Chinese amphibious vehicle looms, pushing through the palm grove. Whoosh! The rocket leaves the tube in a cloud of gray exhaust. It streaks across the gap. It strikes the front slope of the Chinese vehicle. Crack! The warhead detonates. The explosion strips the reactive armor tiles off the front glasses. The vehicle shudders and halts, but the main armor holds. The response is overwhelming. The turret of the Chinese vehicle traverses. The coaxial machine gun opens up. A stream of tracers lashes the Iranian position. The heavy rounds chew through the sandbags piled against the wreck. They punch through the thin sheet metal of the track guard. A grenade lands with a metallic clink inside the defensive circle. Grenade! A soldier kicks the small steel sphere. It skitters over the lip of a crater just as it detonates. The blast throws dirt and rocks over the defenders. The concussive thump rattles their teeth. On the left flank, Chinese Marines advance in a wedge formation. They move aggressively, firing from the hip to suppress the Iranians. They toss smoke grenades. White phosphorus clouds bloom, mixing with the black oil smoke, creating a blinding fog. They are closing the distance. They are less than 50 meters away. The sound of their boots crunching on the coral is audible between the bursts of gunfire. The Iranian captain grabs the radio handset of a dead signaler. He keys the mic. He shouts for artillery support. He shouts for anything. The radio remains silent. The antenna is sheared off. He drops the handset. He draws his pistol. He racks the slide. He points it at the wall of smoke approaching them. 700 hours, final defensive pocket, Spratly Reef. The resistance is breaking. The volume of incoming fire is a solid, deafening wall. It chips away the coral rock and shreds the sandbags, protecting the few remaining defenders. The air inside the circle is choked with gray dust and the stinging scent of unburnt powder. The Iranian captain crouches low. He fires the last round from his pistol. The slide locks back with a metallic clack. He drops the empty magazine into the sand and reaches for a fresh one. He freezes, his belt is empty. On the perimeter, a Chinese squad leader signals with a chopped hand motion. Two Marines step out from behind the cover of a burning truck. They carry single-shot, shoulder-fired rocket launchers. They take a knee. They aim at the center of the Iranian position. Whoosh! Whoosh! The rockets cross the short distance in a blink. They impact the base of the wreckage, shielding the defenders. The explosion is absolute. The blast wave funnels directly into the foxholes. It lifts the heavy steel plates of the wrecked vehicle and slams them down onto the men hiding beneath. A cloud of black smoke and pulverized rock engulfs the position. The concussion knocks the captain backward against the dirt wall. His vision goes white. Before the dust settles, the Chinese Marines storm the breach. They move with brutal efficiency. They crest the sand berm, weapons raised. A dazed Iranian soldier tries to lift his assault rifle. A Marine fires 2 rounds, pop, pop. The soldier collapses. Another defender raises his hands, blood streaming from his nose. A Marine kicks his weapon away and shoves him face down into the sand. Zip ties are cinched tight around his wrists. The shooting stops as quickly as it started. "Cease fire! Cease fire!" The shout echoes across the beach. The sudden silence is jarring. It rings in the ears. Marines keep their weapons trained on the bodies and the few groaning survivors. They sweep the area, checking corners, checking debris. One Marine kicks a piece of burning metal away from a prone figure. He checks the pulse. He shakes his head. The captain coughs, spitting red dust. He looks up. The barrel of an assault rifle is pointed at his chest. The Marine behind the sight does not flinch. The fight is over. The position is overrun. 0730 hours. The blackened remains of the vehicle park, Spratly Reef. The roar of combat is replaced by the crackling of cooling metal and the hiss of small fires. Thick black pillars of smoke rise vertically from the 24 destroyed armored vehicles. They merge into a dark canopy that stains the blue sky. The air is still, heavy with the stench of burnt rubber, cooked diesel, and death. The waves wash gently against the shore, turning the blood-soaked sand at the water's edge a pale pink. A Chinese transport helicopter descends slowly onto the secured beach zone. The rotor wash kicks up a cloud of gray ash. The wheels touch down. A ramp lowers. A team of officers steps onto the sand. They wear pristine uniforms that contrast sharply with the soot-covered Marines guarding the perimeter. The inspection begins. The lead colonel walks toward the center of the formation. He steps over a twisted piece of a tank barrel half buried in the ground. He approaches the crater left by the first tactical ballistic missile. It is a gaping wound in the earth, 20 feet wide, filling slowly with muddy seawater. He nods to his aide. The aide snaps a photograph of the impact zone. Further down the line, the human cost is tallied. Iranian prisoners sit in the sand in a long, dejected row. Their hands are zip-tied behind their backs. They stare at the ground. Corpsmen move down the line, applying bandages to burns and shrapnel cuts. A stretcher team carries a body covered in a poncho toward a waiting landing craft. A bulldozer from the engineering corps rumbles off a landing ship. It lowers its blade. It begins to push the twisted wreckage of the lead armored vehicle off the main track. The metal screeches against the coral as the heavy hulk slides sideways. The path is being cleared. The colonel stops at the edge of the reef. He looks out at the destroyer anchoring in the deep water. He raises his radio handset. He speaks one short sentence to the fleet command. The island is secure. The threat is neutralized.